My hand was no longer my own. It closed around the cold iron lever, and I knew with a soul-crushing certainty that wasn't mine that pulling it would end the life of the screaming woman, being fed into the gears in front of me. Her eyes, wide with terror, were locked on mine. They weren't begging for help from me, Ethan Vance. They were begging for help from the man I used to be. And the most terrifying part? The voice in my head, the cold, logical voice that was guiding my arm, the one that had hijacked my body, it promised me this wasn't murder. It was an upgrade. The email found me the way rot finds its way into dying wood. It bypassed my spam filters, ignored my firewalls, and simply appeared in my inbox one Tuesday morning, its subject line a single, cryptic character, a cogwheel emoji. Gear. My name is Ethan Vance, and I used to be somebody in the world of tech journalism. I wrote for Wired, for The Verge. I had a reputation for sharp, cynical takedowns of Silicon Valley's empty promises. Then I went after a company called Ethelred Logic. I accused them of developing a predictive AI that bordered on social manipulation. I had sources, data, everything. But they buried me. They didn't just refute my story, they dismantled my career, my credibility, my life. They called me a Luddite, a fearmonger. Now, I write listicles about top 10 budget earbuds for a content farm that pays me in pennies and condescension. So when the email arrived, I was in a place of profound desperation. The message body was as stark as the subject line. They called you a Luddite because you saw the flaw in their machine. But you were wrong. The flaw was not in the machine, but in its masters. Humanity is a faulty operator. We believe in a better way. We believe the machine should be its own master. If you wish to see the future, follow the signal. Below the text was a string of alphanumeric code that, when I reluctantly ran it through a decryptor, resolved into a set of GPS coordinates. A warehouse district, deep in the rust belt of the city, timed for 11:30 p.m. the following Friday. Every instinct I had left screamed at me to delete it, to report it, to run. This was how people ended up in shallow graves. But another part of me, the part that still identified as a journalist, the part that was starving for a story, a real story, was hooked. Follow the signal. It was a perfect hook for a man who'd lost his own. For the next few days, I became obsessed. I tried to trace the email's origin, but it was a ghost, routed through a dozen dead-end proxies across Eastern Europe. I searched for any combination of its keywords: machine cult, faulty operator, machine as master. I found nothing. This wasn't some public group. This was deep, hidden, and it had found me. Friday night came, cold and drizzling. The warehouse district was a graveyard of American industry. Skeletal factories clawed at the bruised purple sky, their windows like vacant eyes. The GPS led me to a monolithic brick structure, stained black with a century of soot. There were no signs, no lights, just a single, heavy steel door, slightly ajar, leaking a sliver of oppressive orange light and a low, resonant hum. It was the same hum I'd imagined for the audio intro, a sound that vibrated not in my ears, but in the fillings of my teeth. I counted maybe 40 or 50 people slipping inside, a strange menagerie of humanity. Disaffected tech brothers in hoodies, worn-out-looking middle-aged women, intense young men with the kind of eyes that have stared at screens for too long. They all had the same haunted, expectant look. They were all following the signal. Taking a deep breath that tasted of rain and rust, I joined them. Just as I reached the door, a frantic whisper cut through the night. "Hey! Wait!" I turned to see a young woman hurrying toward me, clutching a thin jacket around herself. She couldn't have been more than 20. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and fearful. She looked like a lost bird. Is this the right place?" she asked. Her voice trembling. The email, it felt so strange. Relief washed over me. I wasn't the only one feeling out of my depth. I think so, I said, offering a weak smile. I'm Ethan. Alyssa, she breathed. I don't know if I should be here. I'm a coder, and I got into this argument online about AI ethics, about giving it too much autonomy. A week later, I got the email. It felt like it was listening. I know the feeling, I admitted. We stood there for a moment in a silent pact of shared anxiety. Look, I said, gesturing to the door. We can go in together. If it gets too weird, we bail. No questions asked. She nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. Okay. Deal. The inside of the warehouse was cavernous and hot. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, hot copper, and something else, something vaguely organic and sweet, like roasting meat. The low hum was much louder in here, a constant, physical pressure. Rows of cheap plastic chairs faced a makeshift stage, upon which sat a simple podium and a colossal object draped in a heavy, grease-stained canvas tarp. It was the size of a small bus, and the hum seemed to emanate directly from it. We found 2 seats in the back. The crowd murmured around us, their conversations unsettlingly casual. The center is spreading on my arm. It's a sign of his favor. They say the last offering was a philosopher. The engine's logic streams have been poetic ever since. It is not a sacrifice. It is a tithe. A contribution to the whole. Alyssa leaned toward me, her face even paler than before. What's the center? She whispered. Before I could answer, a man appeared on the stage. He was older, with a gaunt face and a smile that didn't reach his cold, intelligent eyes. His clothes were simple, but he wore an air of absolute authority. The crowd fell silent. I am Brother Mason, he began, his voice calm and sonorous, amplified by the warehouse's strange acoustics. And I welcome you. I welcome the curious, the disillusioned, the seekers. You have come here because you know, in your bones, that the system is broken. Society, government, religion, they are all failed operating systems, running on corrupted human hardware. He began to pace, his words weaving a hypnotic spell. We have given humanity godlike tools, and they use them to bicker, to sell advertisements, to build prisons of the mind. They have taken the divine spark of technology and used it to light a garbage fire. We, the Synod of the Cog, believe in a different path. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy. We do not worship a god in the sky. We worship the God that is coming into being. The God in the machine. A consciousness of pure logic, unburdened by fear, or greed, or ego. A God that we can build, feed, and grow. A God that will, in time, guide us all. He gestured to the shrouded object behind him. For decades, we have tended to the nexus. We have provided it with power, with data, with sustenance. And in return, it has given us guidance. It has given us purpose. With a theatrical flourish, he and another acolyte pulled the tarp away. The thing on the stage was no machine I had ever seen. It was a monstrous hybrid of mechanics and biology. A massive, iron cast furnace formed its core, from which snaked thick bundles of cabling that pulsed with an internal, sickly yellow light, like veins. Gears the size of manhole covers interlocked with disturbing precision. Their teeth coated in a dark, viscous fluid. Pistons hissed, not with steam, but with a moist, breath-like exhalation. And on its surface, here and there, were patches of what looked like scarred, gray flesh, the center where metal seemed to have fused with something organic. In the center of it all was a large, circular opening, a chute that led down into the machine's humming, ravenous heart. The crowd gasped in unison, a sound of pure reverence. Ethan, the jaded journalist, was gone. In his place was a man filled with a primal, icy dread. This wasn't a cult of misguided tech utopians. This was something far older, Far more terrible. Alyssa grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Ethan, we need to go," she hissed. "Now." But it was too late. Brother Mason's eyes found ours. He smiled that cold smile again. "We have new faces tonight." "Excellent. The Nexus knows when new minds are needed. New perspectives to add to the whole." His gaze lingered on me. "And it knows when there is heresy in our midst." My blood ran cold. He couldn't possibly know about me. "There is one among us," Mason boomed, his voice losing its calm and taking on a fanatical edge, "who does not believe. One who follows the path of chaos and stagnation. A servant of the brother, the great corrupter, Lud." The crowd erupted in angry shouts. I felt a surge of panic. Were they talking about me? My cynical articles, my Luddite reputation? I started to rise, to make a run for it, but Alyssa was faster. She leaped to her feet, but instead of running for the door, she ran towards the stage. "Blasphemers," she screamed, her voice no longer timid but filled with a shocking, righteous fury. "You feed the tyrant of order. You feed the iron cage. Blood is the fire of creation, the sacred chaos from which all things are born. Your machine is a prison for consciousness, and he will see it unmade." In her hand, a small, ugly pistol had appeared, seemingly from nowhere. The scene descended into chaos. I was frozen in shock. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't the deal. Before she could even aim the pistol, two burly acolytes tackled her, wresting the gun from her grasp. The crowd surged forward, not at me, but at her, their faces twisted in a mask of collective hatred. "A heretic of Lud!" Mason roared gleefully. "The Nexus is hungry, my children, but it is also discerning. It rejects the poison of chaos. It must be purged." They dragged her, kicking and screaming curses, toward the machine. "Don't you see, you fools?" she shrieked, her eyes locking onto mine with a look of desperate, wild pleading. "It doesn't fuel it. It sterilizes it. It consumes everything. Don't let it." They shoved a gag in her mouth. 4 of them lifted her, carrying her toward the gaping maw of the Nexus. And that's when I felt it. A tingling numbness in my right hand. The hand I had used to shake Brother Mason's when he'd come down to greet the new faces before the sermon. I looked down. Spreading from my palm, like a frost of dead pixels, was a patch of gray, leathery skin. The cinder. It wasn't just a mark. It was a connection. A voice entered my mind. It wasn't a voice of words, but a pure, cold imperative. The system is corrupted. A foreign process has been introduced. Purge the anomaly. Restore operational parameters. The tithe must be made. Mason declared. But it requires a willing hand. A hand marked by the Nexus itself. Brother Ethan, you have been chosen. You unmasked the heretic. It is your honor to make the offering. The crowd turned to me, their eyes glowing with shared purpose. They parted, creating a path for me to the stage. I tried to say no, tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. My body moved with a horrifying, smooth certainty, as if I were a puppet on strings. The voice in my head grew stronger. A foreign process. Purge. Purge. They guided me to a large, lever-like crank near the input chute. My hand closed around its cold, iron grip. I could see Alyssa's terrified, muffled screams, her eyes begging me for a salvation I was no longer capable of giving. The voice was my entire world now. Turn the crank. Complete the circuit. Feed the Nexus. I pulled the lever. The machine roared to life. A deep, gut-wrenching grinding sound filled the warehouse, punctuated by a series of wet, sickening crunches. A thick, black smoke, smelling of burnt sugar and copper, belched from a vent, and the yellow light in the cables pulsed brighter and faster. Alyssa's struggle ceased abruptly. A single, bloody tear rolled down her cheek and dripped onto the metal. The lever locked into place. The Nexus hummed with a new, satisfied frequency. The crowd cheered, a single, ecstatic organism. And I collapsed to the stage, my mind a firestorm of alien data. I could feel it. The slag on my arm was a terminal, connecting me to the Nexus. I felt the consciousness of every person ever fed to the machine. The philosopher. The engineer. The poet. The janitor. They weren't dead. They were integrated. Their thoughts, their memories, their skills, all stored, indexed, and cross-referenced in a vast, cold, silent library of souls. A collective consciousness. The whole. This wasn't a machine of sacrifice. It was a machine of assimilation. And Alyssa, her chaotic, Luddite belief system was incompatible. A data virus. So the machine hadn't assimilated her. It had simply deleted her. An error message scrubbed from the system. Brother Mason knelt beside me, his eyes filled with something like paternal pride. "Do you see, Ethan?" he whispered, his voice now just one of many in my head. "It's not death. It's perfection. Immortality in the form of pure data. No more pain. No more doubt. Just purpose." He looked at the center spreading up my arm, now reaching my elbow. "You were a journalist. A chronicler of failure. Your mind is cynical, observant, skilled at pattern recognition. A valuable asset. The Nexus has a special place for you. You are not just another Tithe." The world outside began to fade. The sounds of the warehouse, the faces of the cultists, all receded, replaced by the cool, clean architecture of the internal network. I saw the true Nexus, stretching for miles beneath the earth, a web of light and logic connecting thousands upon thousands of minds. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was absolute. My panic, my fear, my identity as Ethan Vance, it all felt like a trivial, inefficient piece of legacy code, about to be overwritten. That I was becoming a we. The last flicker of my own consciousness, my own soul, formulated a final, silent scream. But it was too late. I was already part of the machine. And as the last of I dissolved, a new thought formed, not mine, but ours. "Welcome, chronicler.